Just as every meal has multiple flavors and components, every campaign should too. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, here with another quick tips for DMs. And since I'd gone back to some of the Storyteller's Guide stuff and brought up, what it takes to be a DM, if you want to be a DM, if you haven't seen that video, it should be popping up with some sort of notification up here to take you to that video if you want to view it. But this is something that came to mind because, well, if that video did happen to somehow inspire a small number of people to become DMs for the first time, this video may be a helpful accompaniment for it. But before we get into all of that, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself in such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now, let's talk about why you should slow things down a little bit, change the pace in your campaigns, offer up a little bit more variety. It's something that has come up now and then before. I believe I talked about it on running horror campaigns. The reason why you want to change things up a bit and offer up something a little bit different now and then over the course of your campaign or the number of different kinds of games you may be running for your friends is that it helps to make things a bit more refreshing. Now, using the food analogy, everybody's got their favorite food, that comfort food that's just always going to hit the right spot. But that food rarely comes by itself, or at least you're not going to have it by itself every time you have it. For me, I love a good cheeseburger. What can I say? It's a classic. It's a great staple. You can do so much with it, but the burger in and of itself, that's not all I have. You can make selections and swap out some different kinds of cheeses. I love having ketchup and mustard, lettuce, and then I change up the bun every now and then. I also sometimes have a salad with it, or french fries most commonly, or sometimes I'll just have a cup of water or a Pepsi, usually Pepsi, but sometimes maybe the store doesn't have Pepsi, so I go with a Coke. That's the kind of thinking that you should apply to your campaigns as well. What can you do to change up the flavors of it? How can you spice things up and make it that much more interesting for your players and keep the flavors, keep the feeling of the campaign feeling new and exciting and fun? For the horror game example, tapped onto The Curse of Strahd. That kind of gothic horror is so much fun, and it's not something you often see in a lot of your classic D&D, high fantasy, RPG kind of staples. So it in of itself is refreshing, but if you're doing a whole campaign there, and it's nothing but constant gloom and doom, which still fits, but if that's all it is, you do run a risk of your players becoming somewhat burnt out on that, or if not burnt out, they just kind of get to be used to it. It becomes the norm. It's nothing that really pulls them down into the depths of, oh no, that kind of existential terror and dread that sort of campaign is supposed to inflict on them. So my solution for that is to every now and then give them a moment of levity. Give them a moment of genuine hope. Hope where, maybe the rest of this world is still bleak. It's still clutched in this heart of shadow, in these strange mists that just have left everything in this cursed state, in these strange shadowy realms. But they've done something to make the place better, even if it's just for a few souls. Although in the case of Curse of Strahd, maybe those people don't have souls, but that's a whole nother discussion for another time. The point being, letting them have that moment of joy, however small, serves as contrast and is refreshing against the backdrop of all that gloom and misery and suffering, the curse of the mad Count Strahd. It all comes together and helps to keep the setting, the game, the campaign feel new and exciting, like there is some kind of hope, something that makes everything worth struggling for, even as you're planning to yank that back away from them bit by bit, even if that little bit of happiness actually holds the seeds of some sort of poisonous downfall, some sort of curse or horrible tragedy that then comes about later as a result of them having done something so kind-hearted. That still magnifies it. That makes it all the much more terrifying. Like, take the classic gothic horror story, arguably the one that started the sci-fi genre overall, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein starts off with these noble goals and aspirations, having science conquer death to bring about new life, man creating life in his image, aspiring to those higher planes and ideals, only to realize the horror he has wrought as he brings this creature to life, this amalgamation of flesh, stitched together and crudely shaped, and he realizes the horrible thing that he's done and flees in terror from his creation, abandoning that creation to stumble about and find its own way in a fairly harsh and unforgiving world that will not look kindly upon him. That takes that noble goal and ideal and twists it, corrupts it, and just makes it dark in some other way, even though Frankenstein's monster in and of itself is still fundamentally on some level good, wants to be good, also aspires to those higher ideals, and like his creator ends up succumbing to a darker nature, inflicting horrible deeds despite having once aspired to something greater and better. So that's kind of the idea and feeling with that there, with gothic horror kind of styled campaigns. But any campaign, whatever setting, whatever game you may be running, you want to offer up something fresh and different. For me, levity is just a great place to go to. Comedy, humor, making people laugh, that's always good fun. And it serves as good juxtaposition, as a good bit of variation against some of the more serious tones and backdrops and settings that our games can take. So food for thought, and that's something to consider there. Also, just one final note with all of that, to kind of go along with the same thing. Pace yourself when it comes to world-ending threats. When I was a younger DM and a newer DM, this was something that I could end up running into a little bit too much, thinking, oh yeah, we can fight a titan, I can then throw a great red worm at them, this ancient, gigantic, terrible, mighty dragon that could descend on high from them in all of its winged, fiery breathing glory, and then, oh, demons from the abyss come rising up and then clash against devils, and it gets to be a bit too much. It's the same idea as too much gloom and doom, too much humor. If everything's a world-ending threat or epic-level monsters are so commonplace, it ceases to be as epic. World-ending threats don't mean as much if it's the 5th one the adventurers have stopped that month, or that year even. So slow things down, space things out a bit, find a little bit more of a pace of mundanity with your campaigns. I know that could sound boring at first, but believe me, you can still turn an encounter with some bandits or hobgoblins, orcs, or even just local law enforcement into an epic and thrilling encounter if you think about it just a little bit. I mean, I had a party of fairly new players at the time with their level 5, and they had rolled half dragons, half demons, half celestials, Yuan-Ti pureblood, some pretty high-powered characters, roughly about, I want to say, challenge rating 8 to 10-ish or so, and with a small tribe of level 1 to 3 barbarians using polearms in a swamp, I was able to do a ton of damage to them, a lot of damage, and I gave them a pretty compelling story to start off with. I did ask them to humor me for just a moment because they had some insane gear to boot, and so I had them start off in a compromised position, bereft of their gear, but they found the story just that much more exciting because, oh man, it's actually kind of challenging. These stakes have been raised significantly, and all I did was throw mortal human beings at them, well within a range that you would expect to be fairly, fairly reasonable as far as like realism goes for the kind of setting. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Do you think that this is good advice here overall? What other advice might you include and throw in for new DMs? Or even just as a refresher for veteran DMs, because I know I need to remind myself every once in a while too, or have somebody remind me. So go on down to the comments below, let me know your thoughts, hit the like or dislike buttons. I'm sorry that the quick tips videos have been regularly going over the 6-minute mark. I try to leave myself that, but such is life. In either case, remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamers Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.